Hey there, Wellness family. Thank you for clicking on today's episode of When the Universe Has Other Plans for You. So if you're new to my channel, my name is Peter Gordon, and I'm a graduate student working towards what will be an eventual doctorate in clinical psychology. In addition to that, I am also a life coach, a health coach, and I make videos on mental health, fitness, wellness, and all things that I hope will lead you to lead your most profound life. And also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you're notified each time I post a brand new video. And also feel free to share this video, like it, comment on it, all that good stuff. So thanks again for clicking on episode 2 of When the Universe Has Other Plans for You. Today I got the privilege of interviewing a very dear friend of mine, Ashley Aronson, who is a Los Angeles-based producer, creative, entrepreneur, whose ball-busting, take no prisoners personality has taken her from being a homeless teenager to the hills of Hollywood. Their story is remarkably inspiring, and I hope you enjoy this interview as much as I did interviewing Ashley. Now let's get into it. Okay, welcome folks to episode 2 of When the Universe Has Other Plans for You. And today I'm joined by a dear friend of mine for about 5 years now, I think 6 or 7 years, Ashley Aronson. And Ashley is sort of what I consider, you're doing a little queen wave there, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's dope. Ashley is one of those women that when you come across her, you sort of want to hang around her more. You want to kind of get to know her backstory. When I met her, I think I met you actually, probably about 2015, I believe it was.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and I think at that time, I believe I was into the bodybuilding world, and I was promoting and all this kind of stuff. And I think you were interested for a split second in competing in bodybuilding, and I was like, why do you want to do that?
Peter was the messiah of diet and exercise in 2015. If you wanted to get fit and get ready for these competitions, go get Coach Peter. He was the guy.
And then, but then I was a weird coach that kept telling you, why do you want to do this competition thing?
Oh yeah, and he kept it real with you. He would be like, okay, let me see. Realistically, you're gonna have to drop 50 pounds, and you're not gonna like what you want to look like, you look like at the end of that. And I was like, okay, you're right, but I still want to try.
Yeah. I don't think I think you end up going half when you're like, I won't do this anymore.
Yeah.
And to be honest, low key, I was actually happy because for me, it was like, at that point, I think I was going into my space where I didn't really want to be in that world anymore. And so I was like, I don't want this for people. But, so here we are. So yes, I think I met you back then, and I sort of was interested in your backstory. Like, I think you were consulting, right, in DC here.
Yeah, consulting. I have about now 15 years of experience doing technology management consulting. And back there, I was doing the government consulting grind, and like most people that live in the DMV,
right.
Paid but not happy.
And then somehow I think it was like 3 years later after that, we kept in touch, we kept vibing, and then you kind of sprung this on me that, hey, I'm moving to California, and I'm like, what are you going to do in California? Tell me about that. Like, so you're in California now. What are you doing in California?
Yeah. So okay. So the transition to California was really organic. I was in a place where I was like, I do not like what I'm doing. I really am not vibing with the DMV. It's not me. It's all politics, attorneys, blah blah blah. I don't like working for other people. I gotta break out of this matrix. I don't know where I want to go, but I need to get out. And people kept telling me, like, you need to go out west. That's where there are, people are more relaxed. You can be creative. I was like, yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to be a creative. Like, I don't know creating what, but how can I take what I have now and transition it out to the West Coast? And so I had made the transition from working for other big consulting firms to working for myself, and got a few contracts, and was able to kind of build up a financial nest egg to provide some security to just take the leap and jump out to California. And I said to myself, listen, I don't know what exactly it is I want to do. I know it's not this. I have some high level, I don't know, features, characteristics of the type of work I would like to do. I'm just going to go out there and figure it out. Talk to different people, explore, and be open-minded. And so that's what I did. I had some friends that kind of cleared the pathway a little bit for me. They moved out here first, and so I had a bit of a soft landing spot when I came out here. And I made the leap, packed my stuff up, put it in storage, aka my parents' attic, and made the leap and slept on couches for a few months and tried to figure out where I need to be. LA is a huge area. So, you know, pre-COVID times, you need to kind of figure out where you need to be because traffic is a mother and you'll spend 3 hours in traffic if you're not careful.
So when did that move happen? When did you first move to California?
So literally, what's the day? Today's February 20th, March 1st, 3 years ago is when I moved to California. Yeah. Time has flown.
And so you slept on couches, and what was that experience like, kind of couch surfing?
It sucked. Yeah. It absolutely sucked. I mean, you're at the mercy of other people's habits. You know, I had some money, but I didn't want to spend it. Yeah. Because TBD was uncertain. Mm-hmm. And so I needed to, you know, be smart with my money and not spend it. It sucked. You know, the first people I stayed with, they partied a lot. You know, they had just moved to LA, they lived downtown, and they were like, I am going to seize the moment. And by seize the moment, they're out, you know, Monday through Sunday, drinking, partying, whatever. And here I am trying to like be disciplined and eat my salmon out of a can and work out and get my sleep so I can focus and, you know, get on my feet. And, you know, it just was kind of like, how bad do you want this? And really me embracing, like, this is the process. I'm paying my dues. Yeah. Right. To get where I want to go.
Did you have a moment to, like, when you're in that space where you're like, why am I doing this? Did you question yourself during that moment, that period of time?
No. So there was a point, there was a defining moment in my life before I moved to California. It was actually when I transitioned from working for consulting firms to working for myself, where I accepted the fact that the suffering, you know, is a part of the journey. Right. And nobody gets anywhere successfully without going through that suffering and that pain and that period of doubt and uncertainty. So it's like, there are times where you might have that moment of, okay, what the I'm gonna curse, sorry.
That's all right.
What the fuck am I doing? Like, I'm crazy. Like, you know, little woman, let me go find this sugar daddy and you know, settle down and kick my feet up. But the reality is, I know me, I wouldn't be happy.
You thought about that?
Process.
You thought about the sugar daddy?
I thought about that. I was like,
what?
I'm looking at, especially in LA. You look at LA is like sugar daddy mecca. Okay?
Wait a minute. The Ashley that I know is so gung-ho about her own space and her own identity and you know, we talked at least several times a week, you know, while you're there. We still talk now. And I never at any point heard you talk about the concept of thinking about a sugar daddy. Like,
I mean, it's a fleeting thought, okay? Like, it crosses your mind. It's like when it gets really hard and you're like, I want to quit, but I'm not. You know, that's how I felt. Like, I was like, you look around, you're like, what are my options? Let me think about this. I mean, and so I for sure, there are periods of time where I was like, what am I doing? But you know, very quickly, you know, I've already built the arsenal of tools, you know, to have the mental, spiritual, emotional wherewithal to be like, this is what you have to go through. Like, you kind of flip the narrative on its head. It's like, I'm conditioning myself for something greater. And in order for me to level up, I need to go through this. So pay attention, be present, learn from this, embrace this, you know, and power through. So,
you know, where did that sort of resilience come from? I mean, is it something from your childhood? Is it, let me ask you this. I guess this is a good way to ask this question. I believe that none of that resilience just happens overnight. I think it's something that builds over time, right? Did your childhood add to your resilient streak or your resilient personality right now? What was your childhood like?
So first, to answer the first question, yes, I do think that my childhood added to that. And how is, you know, I grew up, first of all, let me back up. I do think that there are some innate qualities that contribute to a person's ability to be resilient.
I agree.
And so that coupled with, environmental circumstances, I think has presented the world with who you see sitting in front of you right now, Ashley Aronson. And so my parents were very strict. I had a very tumultuous childhood. There were some positive aspects to it, in that the discipline that specifically my stepfather kind of instilled and upheld in the household. But it was kind of like that shit talking environment. Like, if you don't do this thing, you're going to be a failure, and but in the same breath, you can do anything you put your mind to,
Right.
Mind over matter. And I was an athlete. So I had a lot of that kind of conditioning as well. And if you ever played a sport, most coaches, they kind of embed that toughness in you, that grit.
Right.
Like you gotta grind, you can do it, like, but it's hard work. And so I think there was a combination of a couple things. It was, yes, it was that discipline. Yes, it was that shit talking. Fortunately for me, I'm somebody that responds positively to that. If you talk shit to me, I'm going to be like, oh, really? You say I can't do it? Oh, I'm definitely doing it now. Just because you think I can't do it.
So that attitude, how did that sort of play out in your house? Because I imagine if you are the person that takes this and, like, I'm going to fight back, I imagine with that disciplinarian type parenting, there was was there some kind of heads knocking at some portion in your early life?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, I that's the source of the contention. It's all a function of control, right? I want to control my life, but I'm a child, so obviously I'm not allowed to control my own life.
Right.
So they wanted to administer some control, and I think below the tough exterior, and I'm speaking about myself, below the tough exterior, there's the complexity of emotion and sensitivity and all those different things that were kind of like a quiet storm, if you will, that wasn't really tend to in that dynamic, because it was this tough shell exterior of two individuals, my stepdad and me, butting heads that entire time. But it's what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and I honestly believe that.
Right. How did that play out, like, in high school? For what type of high school life did you have, based on your? Because I know a lot of people I've talked to that said they have this very, very disciplinarian household, but when they get to high school, that was like their playground. What was high school like for you?
I mean, so I always kind of was rebellious. I was smart. I was good at sports. So I did well in school. I had friends. When I got into high school, it was kind of like this weird transition period where I was discovering boys. I was, I 5'9", had a, hourglass figure, and I attracted a lot of attention, especially of older boys. And I think that at that point in time in my life, I wanted attention. I wanted to kind of explore that. For whatever reason, I wasn't getting the love and validation that I needed at home or elsewhere. So to answer your question, when I got to high school, I started acting up, and I couldn't talk to my parents because they were so, judgmental, and couldn't really talk about my feelings. And, I had a boyfriend that was much older than me, couldn't talk to my parents, again, because it was like, you don't agree with us, you're wrong, can't talk to you, you're terrible. And things started to kind of unravel. And by the time I was around 16, actually leading up to that, but, sneaking out, partying, not going to class, even though I was playing sports. But unfortunately, in Howard County, if you miss a certain amount of days, you have to repeat the year. And so when I was 16, I had missed like whatever it was, the 4.5 days, the 5 days, whatever. They were like, well, you're going to have to repeat the year. I said, I'm not repeating another year. Like I literally have a year left. I'm not going to be held back because I missed 6 days of school. Like that's just ridiculous. I'm dropping out. I should also mention at that point, things had gotten so bad with my parents, they kicked me out of the house.
Hold on. Okay. Let me backtrack here because you kind of glossed over this little topic. And I'm like, wait a minute. The Ashley that I know is Miss Studious, Miss well-read, blah, blah, blah. But you're telling me that Ashley, for lack of a better word, was a high school dropout?
Yes, I am a high school dropout. Yes. I was kicked out of my house, out of my parents' house. I shouldn't say my house, my parents' house.
Right. And then and now you're home. And now you're essentially homeless.
I was homeless. I was actually sleeping I had a car. I was actually sleeping in my car.
What? Wait.
Yeah.
It's like this. So, okay. So at 16, you are homeless. You're sleeping in your car. You have you have an older boyfriend. Okay. Do you even remember what was going through your head at that time? Like, what did you think of what the future was going to be like at that point?
I wasn't thinking about the future.
Wow.
I wasn't thinking about the future. I was such in a broken emotional, spiritual space at that time. Mm-hmm. I think that I had lost all sense of self. I think that I didn't love myself.
Yeah.
And see, this is the interesting thing. As an adult, I look back on that and I think about my parents. Like, why didn't you see that? Why didn't you see that's what I was going through? So you could reach out to me and be like, I know you're hurting right now. I see that you're participating in this destructive behavior. Mm-hmm. But in their minds, it was like, she's just a rebel. She's a bad kid. Like, kick her out, teach her a lesson.
Right.
And that's why I was mentioning all this emotional stuff that wasn't really tended to because I never showed that. I never showed the complexity of what was underneath of that surface. I was just like, I'm a tough kid. I can do this. I would talk trash. Can't tell by now.
Which is so not uncommon. I mean, it's quite common amongst, when we study adolescent development, once children are acting out, it's usually a sign of, I need you to come talk to me. I want you to understand me. But so now you're homeless and you're just not thinking about the future. So what happened after that?
I mean, it took about a year and a half, 2 years for me to kind of like go through that whole cycle. And I mean, you rock bottom. I'll tell you rock bottom. Bottom.
So there's even more rock bottom.
Oh, there's a rock bottom. It's like, I'm near the core of the earth at this point. Okay, like that's how deep I was.
And here's the thing. This is like this is like very exclusive information here because as you guys are hearing this, I've never heard this story before. I just again know this other side of Ashley, which is what I know now.
Yeah.
So so what is this rock bottom? And please don't.
And it's crazy. And the only reason you don't know this is because it's like, it's so far in the past. Who I am now is so far removed from who that little girl was. I'm sure there's probably, therapists. You'll probably, know some of the deeper stuff that I've it's repressed in there. But
I saw the psychoanalyze you more deeper now that I know this part. But
oh my gosh, you in my journal. So when I got kicked out, I was dating this older guy. I was sleeping in my car, and oh god, he actually lived with his mother. And at some point in time, I actually moved in with him and his mom. And I know.
How old was this guy? And you were 16.
Terrible.
How old was this guy?
I was 16. Terry was 20.
20. Oh, okay.
20. He was yeah.
So, okay.
The picture of success, living with his mother.
His mother, right. You were looking at him like, oh, I got me a good catch, girl. He's living with his mother.
Cheating, Let's take me to the altar.
Yeah.
And so, anyways, moved in with him. Ended up getting pregnant at 16. I was pregnant, and I was like, oh my god, what am I gonna do? I think I contemplated keeping it. But something deep down inside, like I was in a bad place. Like obviously looking for love,
Wow.
Deep down inside, I was like, this is not it, Ashley. This is not,
Wow.
it's like that little voice when we talk about the universe, like,
Yeah.
conspiring, like there was something in me, even amongst all this chaos and this sadness and
Yeah.
all these things going on, there was still that little voice inside of my head that was saying, this ain't it, girl. Like this
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
this is bad news. You need to get the fuck out of here.
Right.
And he was horrible. He was verbally abusive, physically abusive. And I was just like, Peter, I remember this one time we got an argument. We're from the East Coast, so DC, East Coast.
Right. Right.
We wear Timberlands. I literally picked up a Timberland, and
Yeah.
he had hit me, knocked me off the bed. I picked up a Timberland and chucked this thing at his head, like bloodied up his eye, his nose. I was like, I gotta get out of here. I get out of here. Long story short, I have no
Yeah.
kids. I ended up getting an abortion, and very, very soon thereafter, I moved out. I was like, and by the way, my mother, my family, actually, I think my sister does. Nobody knows this information. I didn't share this with my mom. I didn't call her like, oh, no, I dealt with this all on my own.
As a 16-year-old, you're doing this by yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I was one part ashamed, because I didn't want to prove them right. It's like, why am I going to go to them and be the recipient of more judgment? I don't want that. Yeah. And so, that kind of like kicked me into a different gear. And I moved out of there. I was working in like the pharmacy at grocery store. And I was like, I got to get my GED. I actually ended up getting my GED before I was actually supposed to graduate high school.
So you just kind of, how does that work? I mean, I'm from Jamaica. So for me, the notion of getting your GED is like a little bit different. How did you just get your GED that quickly? You took an exam or something?
Yeah, you literally can take an exam. I mean, the reality is this, I grew up in a, affluent area. Howard County is one of the top, areas or counties for education in the entire country, and so it wasn't too hard for me, even with the education I had, to open up the GED and take that thing without really studying. I wasn't.
Yeah, I mean,
I had some good foundation,
Yeah. It says a lot about your foundation, and also says a lot about the education system here in America, right? Like, you can just go take the exam and you got a GED,
College is a scam. Okay,
right.
Let's go back.
I mean, listen, I can't argue
unless you're
with you on
going
that.
for something that you're actually. It's funny. Small tangent. I was listening to a conversation yesterday, and somebody asked, "What's more valuable, actual experience or education?" And the person was like, "Listen, experience is education, and education is experience.
They're one and the same thing."
And it's like, yes, whatever you need to get, if you need a certain amount of discipline, somebody to provide you with structure so you can learn certain things, education might be the route to go. Or if it's regulated or whatever. If you're not that person, you don't do well in that structure, experience might be the best way to go.
Gotcha.
I'm a little bit of both.
Yeah. So, man, so listen, at 16 years old to sort of go through those type of serious life changes, and because in your 16 years, you quite frankly lived a lot more than a lot of people have lived in their entire lives at that point. It sounds like it.
Yeah.
So what did you? So you get your GED, then what happens after that? Do you just you figured out how to go to college and all that kind of stuff? What happened after that?
Yeah, I enrolled in community college. I was again. That voice is still in there talking.
Still in the head.
Sis. You need to figure this out.
At that time, I was really the universe trying to get at you, and you just I guess you listen to it slowly but surely over time. But so you end up going to community college, and what happens after that?
I ended up transitioning to university. So at some point in time throughout this journey, I don't know if this is because of my stepdad's a lawyer, and that's why I set my eyes on this goal. But I was like, I want to go to law school. Like I I thought about what set of skills could I obtain that would give me the broadest application in terms of my skill sets. Like, you get a business degree, you can do almost anything, right? You get a JD, that gives you the ability to, excuse the background noise, to negotiate contracts and be even, in my opinion, like, more dangerous than business, because everything's so heavily regulated. And quite frankly, like, I like the art of negotiation. I thought I love language. I find it fascinating how people use language to tell stories or defend one another. And I've always I've had this, it's almost like it's involuntary reaction when I see somebody that is deemed lesser than the underdog being taken advantage of. And so I wanted to not only help myself, but help other people as well. And so we enrolled myself in community college, got into, just transferred into 4-year. But this entire time, I'm working my way through school. I grew up in Columbia, Maryland, which is about 45 minutes from DC, capital of our country, tons of government jobs. Was able to secure a job being a consultant, which is another, Peter, we're going to be on here for 3 hours. This is a whole nother story.
So
I joined the military, by the way.
Say what?
I joined the military. Did I not tell you about that?
No, you did not. I've never, this is, so okay. So let me just backtrack here because I'm trying to capture everything you've said so far.
See why I don't give you a bio?
Right. You know what? I appreciate that. And thank you for that, because I think I'd have been reading from now till tomorrow. So you've transitioned from community college into 4-year college. And I'm hearing in that moment, that part of time, you're in the military.
So I joined the military. I did the Army National Guard because I needed money for school.
I see.
Makes sense. I was like, I need money for school, and I want discipline. I want somebody to help me become more structured in my life, because I want to just like, I feel like I'm behind at this point. Yeah. I fucked up in high school. I made some bad decisions, and I'm playing catch up at this point. Like my hustle mentality, like, very much started at that point in time. I was like, I'm behind. I got to catch up.
Where are your parents in all this mix now? Like, are they supporting you, or really on your own here?
My stepdad was just like, I don't want to have anything to do with you. My mom, very conflicted, tried the best to support me, without my stepdad really knowing about it. And that and by that I mean, emotionally tried to be there for me. But I and at that point I was very angry at my mom, because I felt like she had turned her back on me, because a lot of these decisions kicked me out, and like, that wasn't her. That was my stepdad. And I was like, you should have been there for me. So we didn't have a great relationship, but she tried to be there the best way she knew how to be. Right. Because let's face it, the path that I'm taking is not traditional, and it's foreign to her. She doesn't understand why I'm making these decisions. So it's difficult for her to show up for me when she doesn't understand where I am and what I'm going through in life. And by the way, I'm not really sharing with her all the intricacies of what I'm going through. So there's a happy ending, I promise. She wasn't there, but I took initiative. That's I've kind of always been like, I'm not going to be able to walk through the front door. I realized I got to find that back alley, back door, go around the system. I adopted that mentality early, and that's kind of the way I maneuvered through life, because I had kind of already blew that option up when I took this path. That's, that's kind of like the reality that I embraced. And so, that's why I joined the military. I was like, all right, I need to think, how can I get funding. I want to get some more discipline. Like, I'm trying to basically collect like these different, tools and resources so that I can catapult myself, to where I should have been in my mind. Right. So again, universe, how it conspires. I joined the military to do the National Guard, which is, the commitment of the weekend and then 2 weeks a year.
2 weeks a year, yep.
And just as I'm supposed to go off to basic, Peter, I get a herniated disc in my back. I can't walk.
Wow.
I'm like 21 at that point, I think. So super young. Yeah, like crazy. Like, I don't know what's going on. And so when the MRI results came back, they're like, you can't go to basic. You could potentially paralyze yourself if you go to basic. So I basically had set my life up. I'm all right, I'm going to basics. All right, well, that's not obviously happening. So I got to figure out what's next. Fast forward, I ended up I got like an honorable discharge from the military because of that, because at that point I become ineligible to go to basic. But when you enter the military, they run all these background checks, and you get at the onset a military clearance, a secret military clearance. Now, anybody who's in DC knows that when you have a clearance, that's job security.
Yep. So you get a good government job and you can stay in it for a long time.
Even more so, a consulting gig that pays more than those government jobs.
There you go. That's even better. Yes.
Yeah. Indeed. And so that was kind of like hindsight. You look at that, you're like, aha, that's why that had to happen, because they had that security clearance. I was very easily able to get a government consulting job, even though I didn't have, a long resume of skills that paid me well enough to put myself through school.
So this is while you're in school, okay, so that's the universe. Like in that moment, you had this plan for yourself that you're confident you're going to go on this path, and next thing you know, you get this herniated disc, and now you're somewhat. I'm hearing from the tone of your voice at that time, disappointed, discouraged, and now you go and then you get this clearance, which then allowed you to get this government job while in college.
Yeah, I mean, unbeknownst to me, I had the clearance, and the way I found out that I had a clearance is I was working in the nightclubs. That was another part-time job I had. And I was a door girl. Like, I had like the VIP list, and I would,
I hate them. Those most annoying. They're so annoying. They think they're so important, and they're like,
I mean, we are important. We are the gatekeeper, okay?
Right, of the dance spot. Yeah. Which club was it? Which club were you at the door person?
Zanzibar right there. Yeah.
On the waterfront.
Yep. Yeah, on the waterfront. Yep.
Yeah. For those of you not familiar with DC, there was a couple of clubs back in the day. There was Love or Dream Club. There was these mega clubs, and then Zanzibar on the waterfront was another one of those mega spots. Now Zanzibar is this sort of big waterfront real estate development area. It's changed now, but yeah.
And I met one of the owners, close friends, owned a consulting company, and befriended me, and we were just chatting up, and I was telling him about my aspirations to go to law school. And he's like, well, I could, help you get a job. We were basically saying I need money. And he's like, talking about government consulting, and he just like asked you for a resume. And I was basically told him my life story. And he's like, wait, you were in the military? They, give you a secret clearance. Just, when they do the initial onboarding. I was like, they do? He's like, yeah. Which makes you a lot more desirable to consulting firms, because they don't have to pay for the I think it's very expensive to get somebody cleared.
Right, indeed.
So when you come in, it's like, oh, okay, easy, we could fit them in here. So anyways, that having that under my belt allowed me to get jobs that paid well enough for me to support myself, support life while I was going to school.
Wow.
And gradually, the consulting, it was primarily in the telecommunications space. I got more experience, and got certifications and, kind of commanded more responsibility in the workplace, and really developed leadership and high ranking positions in the consulting world in parallel to my education pursuits.
This was so you're going through your undergrad and you're doing all these things.
Yeah, I mean, when I graduated college, I didn't need my degree. Like, I was already in six figures, like doing well.
Wow.
I wasn't happy, but doing well financially. Yeah.
Now you mentioned you're thinking about law school. Now, did you end up going to you end up going to law school, right?
I did. I yep. And it's funny because even getting into law school was kind of like a negotiation. I took the LSAT. I did all right. Applied to schools in Maryland because I wanted that in-state tuition. Ended up going to University of Baltimore Law School.
Okay.
And I mean, that was a grind. I went to school at night. I worked all day in DC. I would hop on the train and go directly from work to class at night. Yeah. I lived in DC. Then I would hop back to literally hustle to the train. Like, I would be booking it. We had like 10 minutes between the end of class and when the last train would leave Baltimore to go back to DC to catch that train.
And if you're from this area, you know that damn MARC train, when it's leaving, it's gone. And
it's gone. Yeah. Ghost town. And it was a grind, and it sucked. And I remember being in school was difficult for me. Yeah. It was hard for me to focus, the structure, the amount of reading. I love language. I remember reading the books and be like, wow, I love this. But I just wish I had the energy to really dedicate to learning this stuff and mastering this stuff. Like, I felt extremely frustrated, and I look around me and I'm like, these people that I'm sitting side by side with, like, they have a full-on support system. Like, they have the resources, the time to actually focus on this stuff. A lot of people, and I'm not saying all, because I'm sure there are people probably doing the same grind as I was, but a lot of people go into the night program and not really need to go into the night program. They won't necessarily be working a full-time job just because it's less competitive. Because in law school, you're fighting for grades. Yeah. For position and for your grades. I mean, in most graduate school.
Yeah, because you want to be the top of your class as you're coming out of school.
Yeah, and they curve it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the grades are curved. So it's kind of like you don't want to be at the end of that curve.
Yeah.
So because otherwise,
Did your stepfather at that point sort of help you out? Because you mentioned earlier that he was an attorney. See, this is my psychoanalytical mind now trying to sort of understand the situation. So did he help you sort of with like homework, and did you be able to bounce things off him?
No.
Okay, well, all right, enough said. Enough said.
I mean, the one time I reached out to him, he did a piss poor job of looking at it. Yeah. And when it was a memo, and when I turned that memo in, the professor essentially said in so many words, like, literally, this is the worst memo in the entire class. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I had an attorney actually look at this document.
Yeah.
And then I quickly realized, like, did he set me up on purpose? Like, is he low key upset with me because I made it in the law school and did not listen to him? Like,
Yeah. Let me ask you, was a part of, and I'm glad you said that, was there part of you, and if I'm wrong, please correct me, was there part of you that when you decided to go to law school, was it a part of you, one, that A, you wanted to say, I'm going to show you, or B, I want you to see that I'm doing well and I want you guys to really rally around me, or a little bit of both, or none at all?
I think it was a little bit of both. I think one part of me is kind of like, look at me, I did it even though you told me I couldn't do it.
Right.
And then the other part of me is, now can you accept me, please?
So you're still going after acceptance. You still want.
Yeah, like can you validate that I'm worthy? Because I've done all these things now. So what you said about me, what you thought about me was not true. Okay, now love me now, embrace me now, please. Mm-hmm. But that wasn't the case. And thank God. Okay, universe.
Mm-hmm. Right.
because that's not what was really for me.
What do you mean?
And I think that pursuing a career in law, in the traditional sense, was not why I was put on this earth. And I think that would have also, go ahead.
Do you think you were checking boxes? Like we all, like if you think of like, let's say like Nigerian American families, they if you're not a law, if your kids are not a lawyer, doctor, engineer, you're a total failure, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think you're like checking boxes at that point?
For sure. My motivations, it wasn't about, I had really sat there and sat with myself and thought, this is exactly what I want to do with my life. It was more so, I'm doing this for other people's approval, not because this is what makes Ashley happy. And this is what I feel drawn to do. Yeah. And I think it's funny because we talk about this all the time. I think you rationalize in your mind why you should be doing something, and almost, trick yourself into thinking that that you're doing it for your own reasons, but in all actuality, you're doing it, for other people's approval and praise and validation. Like it's not because what makes you happy.
Yeah, we're all trying to self-actualize, and one part of self-actualizing, as we know, is that validation piece. Like we seek it, we crave it, we almost need it essentially. So yeah, I see. I get it. So did you end up finishing law school? Because it sounded like it was difficult for you.
I did, and it was difficult for me. But I was like, I'm not going to sit for the bar. I was miserable. I was like, this ain't it.
Go back to that. This ain't it. So again,
this ain't it.
And we're gonna call this ain't the universe trying to chip at you at that time, and you're kind of hearing it, but sort of, still working through it.
Yeah, and it's like there are points in your life where you are standing at a crossroad and you're asking yourself, should I pivot? And you're looking to the universe to provide you with some sort of sign to indicate which direction you're supposed to go in. And you have to ask yourself, is this a test to see how bad I really want it? Or is this an indication that this is not what I'm supposed to be doing, and I'm supposed to go in a different direction? And I'm still figuring that out, but we can talk about that later. What my tools are to kind of really be in tune with myself, to my internal compass.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, those are the decisions in your life that you kind of have to decipher. What does this really mean to me at this point? And is the universe actually speaking to me and telling me to go to a different place? And ultimately, that's how I felt. I felt like this. I couldn't identify it at that time, but I look back on it, I'm like, yeah, that's what was going on. I felt sick. I felt I was depressed. I felt sick. Like it was like it was eating at my soul, like soul wrenching of a.
What was it, a physical type of sickening feeling, or was it like more metaphysical, if you will, or mental? Because I know some people, I've heard people tell me that when they get that feeling that they're just not happy, it starts to affect them physically. Did you have physical manifestations of that?
Oh, I'm definitely one of those people. Yeah, I'm psychosomatic. Like if I start to feel like trash on the inside, it will manifest itself physically. Absolutely. And so I just wasn't feeling what I was like. I gotta figure this out, and unfortunately, figuring that out was delayed maybe about 5 more years. Ultimately, like that whole path of coming to the conclusion, like I need to get out of this area and what I'm doing. And that was delayed because of relationships. You get caught up in certain relationships, and it's like, well, maybe I should be focusing on getting married and maybe having kids, and
checking that box.
Check. It's societal pressure. As a woman, you're like, are these things I should be doing? Like, society tells me that you're not worthy unless you've been chosen. And so, and again, that's a box being checked. And something as, go ahead.
And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you. And that's it, because, women oftentimes are judged based on their biological clocks.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's you can have all the success you want, but are you married? Do you have children? Right? So then you
Mm-hmm.
start going, oh well, okay, girl, you know, oh, all right, you know. And
Yeah,
I've seen that in my own family. Seen that amongst my friends. So I hear you. I hear you.
yeah. Um, and so yeah, so I stayed in the area for, about 5 years. After that, I had a couple of like serious relationships I think also kind of distracted me from, you know, tuning in with myself and kind of figuring out what it is I really wanted to make myself happy. Again, looking for validation from other people. Didn't know
So
it at the time, but that's
yeah.
what was going on. Mm-hmm.
So what changed? I mean, like, was there like this light bulb moment? Was it a series of things? Was it an intentional
That
act
little
that you had to
voice,
go through? That little voice.
that little voice never went
This ain't
away.
this ain't it. Kept
This
coming
ain't
back.
it. This ain't it. Like
So
it's
how,
like, and it's funny. It gets louder the worse things get.
that's so dope. I'm gonna have to listen. I'm gonna use that little line. I like that. The little voice in your head
Yeah,
gets louder,
yeah,
the worse things get. That is so
yeah,
dope.
yeah.
That is so dope.
And and that's why, Peter, when I transition into something new,
mhm.
and things are hard, um, I don't mind it as much because I've been conditioned for hard.
Yeah, well, you've been beaten up for the last
Yeah,
for a long time, and it
for
just
a long
yeah,
time. Yeah,
you've had your ass handed
yeah,
to you in several
yeah,
areas, and
yeah.
you've been fighting, and so it builds that creates those calluses, man, that just allows you to hold on to those heavy weights and doesn't cause your hands to hurt to get hurt or what have you.
Right, right.
So you listening to that like what changed? What like so I get that because I've known people who things get loud around them and things get crazy, but they still don't hear it. Was there something though different this time? Because I can remember it like it was yesterday when you just had this different sound in your voice talking to me. And you said, "Hey, I'm going to move to LA. I want to do
Yeah, it
certain
definitely,
what
it definitely,
what
yeah,
was the
it
change?"
definitely was. It was definitely. I will say it was definitely that little voice, and it was definitely kind of like I'm fed up. Like
Mm,
I'm tired of pontificating the what ifs. Like I have to do it myself. It's nobody else's fault. That's another thing too. You got to be accountable.
right.
You got to hold yourself accountable. And I said to myself, you need to control your own life. You need to be proactive, not reactive. And you need to just go for it. And rather than sitting here wallowing in your misery or feeling sad and all those things, you just need to go. And that's what I did. I think there was also, I think I'd also met my threshold of looking for validation from other people. I was just like, I was fed up. I was like, I don't, I don't care anymore about what other people think. Like I need to, the only thing I care about is how I think about myself right now. And I need to fix that. Like I need to get back to basics. And I want to say I took like a year off from people. Like,
Mm,
you know, and really sat with myself and was like, okay, all of a sudden, aha, all right, this is what I need to do. I need to bet on myself. I need to, not care what anybody else thinks, how much money I have, I a title, all those things that people, hang their hats on as characteristics of you've made it or you're successful or you're a good person. Like, no, you need to get right with yourself first.
how did you do that?
And I sat with myself. I had those hard conversations. I held myself accountable.
Mhm.
I allowed myself to be vulnerable, be emotionally sensitive. I'm a huge fan of Brene Brown. I listened
Yep.
to Brene Brown's podcast today, and this is
You,
what I learned.
girl, you send those podcasts to me every other day. I think I bleed Brene Brown these days. Miss Brown, if you ever watch this video, we love you. Um, and this woman might be your biggest fan.
Yeah.
But if Brene Blood was, if Brene Brown was blood, you're probably bleeding her, and you've infected me
Yeah.
with her, and so it is what it is. But she's
Man, I
dope, man.
mean,
She's dope.
there's so much power in controlling the narrative,
Yes,
right?
yes,
And we're conditioned growing up that being vulnerable is a sign of weakness, but in all actuality, it's a sign of courage and
it's.
putting yourself out there to rejection and failure.
I'm so glad you said that, because we've had this discussion many times, right? I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
grew up in a very, very patriarchal society in Jamaica, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you don't show vulnerability, right? And because again, that's weakness, right? That is, you are nothing short. You're half a man if you dare go down this path to show any kind of weaknesses. I remember when I was going through a divorce, it took me almost a year before I said to you, "Hey, I'm having marital difficulties," and you were like, "What?" You
Right.
remember that?
Right.
And it was really when I'd hit that space where I was like, that space you're talking about, where it's like being honest with yourself,
That's
being
right.
honest with your pain and your vulnerability. So I
Yeah.
appreciate you saying that. But anyways, I cut you off. Keep going.
Um, so yeah, I think at some point in time, and this also goes hand in hand with being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Anytime that you transition into that space and say, I'm gonna be, listen, it's more than a cool title and something to put after your name. Um, you when you start building your own brand, when you step out there and say, this company, this service, this product is an extension of me, you're
Hmm.
ultimately serving yourself on a platter for other people to judge you.
And you got to be
you're,
okay with that.
you got to be okay with that. and
Yes.
and really the key to being a successful entrepreneur is being able to fail well. And what I mean by that is that you can deal with your imperfections. You can deal with not getting it right, and you embrace that process. Nobody gets it right out the box. I don't care who you are. You can dress it up. It doesn't matter. There's still going to be some failure. There's always failure in the backstory.
Yep.
And so, anyways, I think it's it was all of a sudden the light bulb goes on, and I'm embracing those imperfections. I'm saying, okay, so the fuck what if I'm not perfect?
Hmm.
So and even bigger than that, so the fuck what if somebody sees it and they know it and they call me out on it? Okay, yeah, I am imperfect, and so are you.
Right.
So is everybody.
The self.
It's
Yeah.
and so it's like when you take away um that power of other people's judgment impacting the way that you feel and think about yourself, you're unstoppable.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And so it doesn't mean that you're not going to be sad when things don't work out, and you might be a little embarrassed here and there. I mean, that's fine. Like that's a part of the process, but having that baseline understanding in your mind, like failure is a part of the process. Anybody who's successful has gone through this. We are all imperfect. In order to get there, we have to go through this. And so it's like
Yeah.
when you set that as your expectation,
Right.
right? You can comfortably as you can step into the unknown.
Yeah, or as I say, one would say, comfortably fail forward. You just keep moving forward,
Yep.
and in
Yep.
effect, it's sort of like, I'm a big fan of stoicism. I think I inundate you all the time with stoic quotes,
Mm-hmm.
and there's this guy who is a big proponent of stoicism, which is an ancient Roman philosophy, of course, and he wrote a book, and I love the title of the book. It's just one of my favorite titles, and it's called "The Obstacles Are the Way." Right? Like if you
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
understand that the obstacles are the way, then you simply understand that it's part of the process, and the
That's
journey
right.
is part of the process, right? And the
Absolutely.
obstacles, all that stuff. So my goodness, so this light bulb goes off, and you decide at some point, through all this work you've done,
Yeah.
it sort of brought you to this place where you decide that you want to move to LA. So we're kind of back to where we started here, where you decide to move to LA, and I could see why. I get it now, how you could deal with couch surfing, right? Because I remember you'd call me and be like, "Oh man, I'm so tired." I'm like, "What?" "Oh, I love these folks, man, but they're partying all the time." I remember those days.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I knowing you as I know you, you're really big on you like your sleep, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I can see how getting your backstory, how that built up that resilience, that's part of the process, right?
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. And being comfortable with starting all over again. It's a
Right.
very humbling experience. You when you have a certain type of financial security, um, you're comfortable in a certain way. And I was taking a leap into, I don't know when my next paycheck is coming.
Yeah.
And I no longer have these things that are attached to my brand that, you know, provide some sort of, legitimacy.
Mhm.
Um, how great I am, right?
Right,
Like,
right.
so it's kind of like, well, what do you do? Well, nothing. I'm unemployed.
Mhm. Mhm.
I don't do anything right now. I'm trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And so it's very humbling, and so with that experience, you also are building up your ability to be your own champion, to be your own source of motivation, and to really stand independent of anybody else's source of validation. By that I mean a title or a paycheck or all those different things, because you're moving in a space where it's about what makes you happy, and you embracing and loving yourself for who you are in that moment, right?
Right.
Very, very powerful.
Indeed,
Very,
indeed
very
it is.
powerful.
So tell us a little bit about what you're doing right now. Because you always tell me and it's so technical and over my head. And I'm like,
Yeah,
what did she just say? It sounds
yeah,
pretty brilliant, but it's a
yeah.
whole different world for me. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing. Like, I think it's so dope what you're trying to accomplish here.
Oh, I appreciate that. It's funny. So yesterday I was talking to somebody. I was like, man, I feel like it's Jamaican. I
Yes,
got,
you have too many
I
jobs,
got,
man.
I
You know, you
got
know.
three, I got three different jobs right now.
Uh-huh.
But so I, I had a high level goal in terms of what it is I want to do. Like I kind of understood what my why was, right? My why
Yeah.
was like, I want to affect change. Okay, that's really broad, Ashley. What does
Right.
that mean? I want to be a part of creating things that broaden perspective. And it's almost like inception. You expose people to certain things, or you incept certain ideas into their brains, and then they're forever changed from that point on. And I look at our society and the world that we live in, I'm like, man, like people have a lot of reasons why there's racism, or people just lack compassion, period,
Mhm.
for one another. It's because they don't have the perspective. They don't look at people different from themselves, and view them as human,
Agreed.
and have compassion for those other individuals. And there, in my mind, there are a lot of ways that we can contribute to closing that gap, right? Bridging
Mhm.
that gap. And at first it was technology. Can I create some products that will help people? And when I moved out to LA, I started doing some product development consulting. It wasn't anything fancy. I was working with a law firm out here, helping them with their technology stack, leveraging the stuff I did back home. But
Gotcha.
I was introduced to this gentleman that um, did some stuff in production. I'm in LA, so
Mhm.
everything's very entertainment focused, and he was focused on building experiences um, by way of film.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I always felt like I was creative at heart, but just didn't really know where my creative ambitions were exactly, where they lie, or where I felt was the best fit. And so I started to look more into that, and found out that I kind of had this natural, um, I don't know, intuition as it pertains to putting together content.
Mm.
Um, and that began my journey into actual content production. And I started to produce a series that was focusing on the lives of athletes and very prominent athletes, and those athletes that had experienced some, traumatic, occurrence in their career that basically threatened their existence as a professional athlete, and their subsequent rehabilitation after that incident, that inciting incident, and what the mental and physical process of that looked like. And that, developing that, I also forayed into virtual reality content. So I was able to kind of both incorporate my technical background and my creative aspirations into one thing. Long story short with that, very, very cool concept. Got to learn a ton of stuff about virtual reality. We actually sold it to Oculus, Facebook's virtual reality arm. That COVID hit, and so we couldn't go into production, which is it's fun. I had to pivot. I realized that this was something that I really love doing. It was kind of like that sleeping giant, that creative sleeping giant had been woken up and wasn't going back to sleep anytime soon. And
what's interesting, let me to cut you, is that I think we had this discussion a while back where we said, I did an Instagram post and we talked about the notion of, and I just noticed my little screen giving me the low battery thing here. So that means I need to plug it in. We can talk. We can talk. We can chat, and that's okay. One of the things we talked about, I did a post and it was notion about it was a video, a YouTube video, and it was about how do you know you walk in your purpose, right? It's for some reason, when you walk in your purpose, even no matter what's going on around you, the universe will give you these little nuggets to kind of guide you, right?
Yeah.
And I keep seeing this recurring theme with you. Like you wanted to pay for undergrad. So you go and you get, you decide to go into the Army Reserve. Your back gets messed up. You end up getting this clearance. You go to this work at this nightclub as those annoying front door girls, I think they're so important. But anyways, clearly a few of them have turned me back in the day, and I'm still salty about that, but that's another discussion. So essentially you get to a space where you meet the owner of the club who says, hey, you have this clearance. A lot of something the universe threw your nugget there, right?
Yep.
You mentioned this guy, somebody you met at this little law firm that you were just doing, typical things that you were doing in DC. You meet this person, and again, universe threw you someone that said, hey, connected you with this thing. So that's like this recurring theme with you. Like you get these little nuggets thrown your way despite the chaos that may be happening around you.
And another dot connection as well is one of the reasons why I was so attracted to this law firm is because I went to law school.
There you go.
So they were like, oh, she understands our industry and she's technical. We definitely want her to come in and provide consulting services.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yep. So you got this program, COVID hits, and it just kind of it doesn't kill it, but it puts things on hold for now. What else are you doing?
I was working with a group of people with that particular project, and Hollywood is one of those places where everything is relationship based, and turns out because I was new into production, the production company that I was working with, they weren't trying to give me my due executive producing credit. And I'm a millennial, and we generally have this mindset of, I don't care if I've ever done it before. Right. I'm doing it now. You pay me and you give me my credit now. I don't have to pay my dues. If I'm capable of doing it right now, you're capable of paying me for what I'm doing right now.
That's one thing I'm so jealous of millennials about, that mindset. Yeah. It's very entitled, but in a lot of ways, I don't want to say entitled, may be the wrong word.
Yeah, I was getting ready to check you on that.
Yeah, and that's all right. That's all right. And you can, but let's say this, for lack of a better word, right? That what we the Gen X goes, that's entitlement, and they're so entitled. maybe in some ways it's really a notion of they know what they're worth,
Yeah.
right? And in fact, we're the losers because we don't know our worth, and so we end up settling. I know I've done that for a good portion of my life.
I just thought of something. I was like, man, that whole notion of being entitled is really just gaslighting.
Mm.
It's really just gaslighting, people manipulating you into thinking that you're not worthy of something unless you pay certain dues.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
yep.
that's not necessarily true.
Yep.
Some people are born with an innate talent to do something out the gate. They can sing, whereas other people have to go learn how to sing.
Yes.
Well, if you sing like, Michael Jackson out the gate, then you should get paid like Michael Jackson.
Right. Pay me.
You know what I mean? Like
yes.
That's the same. It's the same notion.
Yeah.
And part of being successful also is really advocating for yourself. And I am definitely one of those women that professionally, and personally as well, but professionally, I know what I'm worth, and I'm not going to settle for less. So if you're not giving me what I know is appropriate for the circumstances, mm-hmm. I'll kindly excuse myself from those circumstances, and I'll move on, because I feel that it sets a precedent for how people are going to treat you moving forward.
Right.
And time is precious. So I'm not going to waste my time, in a set of circumstances that are not a reflection of my ability to deliver and my self-worth. So I separated myself from that production company, and once again was working independently and trying to figure out what my brand was. And I was like, I'm going to do this producing stuff, set up my own company. I was already independent as a consultant, but I hadn't really formalized it as, a production company. I'm literally going to, take a hard look at setting my own production company up and what that looks like, and start to look at other projects and really learn the industry. Because I'm a student, period. Like I'm infinitely curious, always looking to learn. And I knew that although I was good at, project management and very resourceful and problem solving and putting things together, which are all the functions of a good producer. I was very, very natural. Things opened up for me. I would call Peter and be like, you will not believe who I got in contact with today, and this person is interested. I'm like,
you've dropped a few names on me that I'm like, okay, that's pretty dope.
Yeah. Yeah. And it very, we talk about how the universe, provides you with kind of like some traction, to build up momentum and to indicate to you that this is the right direction you're supposed to be going, and you need to do. That's kind of how that process went for me. Like I was falling, or meeting different people that are exactly what I needed at the right time.
Yeah, that allowed for that pivot to happen.
Exactly. And that pattern continues. Yeah. And so now I'm working with an amazing writer, mm-hmm. Who just got off of a very well-known show, mm-hmm. and developing a property with him and shopping a property to different networks and into individuals to produce and this brand new network that I acquired by way of the last project that I worked on. Wow. It's crazy. I don't know how long have we talked now. I could probably go for at least another hour talking about all the things that just showed up and the stars were aligning. Yeah. And we always talk about having your board of directors. And, which was essentially those people that provide you with kind of like a gut check or can, insight on where you need to go, independent of your own bias. Right. Right. And I just have the most fantastic board of directors, of people that are doing great things in many different facets
Yeah.
of industries and life, and I've been protected. I've really been protected, like in an industry where there's 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 tons of scammers and manipulations and liars. Like,
And
I have been protected, let me tell you.
right. It's interesting, like, when you and I would talk, there was always this mindset. I'm like, initially I remember when you were stepping into that whole sphere, I was like, ugh, girl, watch this, people,
Yeah,
watch this. And I we
yeah,
have these various thoughts because I'm like, I know men because I happen to be one, and
right, right,
we can
right,
be full of nonsense when we're ready, and it's
right.
that thing that you talk about board of directors, what's that thing we talk about? You got to have four things, right? You got to consistently read, you got to write, you got to nurture relationships, right? With just friends and things like friendships, nurture those that matter rather. And that last one is that board of directors, those people who can really give you that objective viewpoint, they say
Yeah,
that makes sense, that doesn't make sense. So I hear you. And what's interesting, but anyways, before I lose thought of this, it came to me. And you sent me a picture the other day, and you said, hey, guess what? I created this little bake thing. You
oh
started
yeah,
baking like cookies or whatever it was you
yeah,
were
yeah,
baking, and
yeah,
I'm like,
yeah,
what? What are you talking
yeah,
about, Ashley? You're like, yeah. Tell me about this cookie thing, because this is a whole nother pivot for you. Not cookie. Is it
yeah.
cookies or is it pastries? Please tell me. And what
They're,
is it
they're,
called?
they're treats. So it's called Bag of Abundance.
Uh-huh.
And how that came to be. So listen, COVID times,
Uh-huh.
everybody self-reflection. We've had a lot of time to sit with ourselves because we had no choice but to be by ourselves. And I couldn't. I was thinking over the holidays. I was like, man, like during these times where people are experiencing such loss and uncertainty, like, what would be the something I could gift people to uplift their spirits and make them, fill them with joy. Um, Abundance, duh. Like, I want to
Mm,
give abundance. How do you give abundance? Like, how does that, materialize into something tangible? And I was like, well, I mean, everybody loves sugar, especially during the holidays. And I love to bake and
uh-huh.
had ample time to do so since I've been at home. I'm gonna make them treats. What does that look like? Oh, let me be creative. So, anyways, I put together what I call a bag of abundance. It's literally in a brown paper bag, hence bag. And then I put on the front of it a label that says of abundance, bag of abundance. And in there I have treats that represent different things that I feel contribute to abundance. You have health, wealth, good vibrations. Listen, when I moved to California, I learned all about what good vibrations mean. I'm all about my
Right. Yeah,
meditation, my
yeah,
yoga,
yeah. You guys are all about
my
vibrations,
shrooms,
are they?
okay?
Yeah. Oh
Like all
Lord.
those things. Yeah.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
But it's important. Energy is very important in being present to that, and really, um, you know, uh, giving yourself time to provide maintenance to your actual vibes and your
Mm.
energy and all that other stuff. Wealth. Well, I said something in there for wealth. And of course, WAP.
Yeah.
I love
Okay.
to
So
talk about it.
yeah, I wasn't gonna let that pass. So I
Yeah.
went to your little Instagram page, Bags of Abundance. By the way, I'll put a link in the description for
Yeah.
Bags of Abundance.
Appreciate that.
People to check it out. And
Yeah.
I'm going through there. I'm like, why does she have a damn cookie that says WAP? And by the
Yeah.
way, I have a picture of it. I'm gonna you probably see it on the screen right now. There's a picture of WAP. And I
Yeah.
meant to call you and be like, what the hell, Ashley? And
You know what?
when you think of WAP, I'm like saying to myself, did she just put that in there? But you know what? My little nasty behind would probably buy it because I think it's dope. But it was
It's one of the
funny.
best
Yeah,
sellers.
it was on a bestseller.
It's one of the best sellers. You're
I
like,
don't
WAP,
doubt
yes,
it.
I can buy that. Okay, let me
Yes.
get that.
Yeah, you
Oh,
know
I gotta
what?
see sometime.
Listen, I thought I saw that and I said I have to speak to her about that. But listen,
Yeah.
you and I can talk forever about this stuff, man. And I've been, but as they say, good things sort of must come to an end, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I've really enjoyed learning more about you. What I thought I knew clearly was not even that was like barely the tip of the iceberg, right?
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and I have learned so much, and I hope people listening to this, especially women, can sort of draw from your story and get parallels to their own lives and be able to kind of realize that you're going to go through it, man. You're going to go through it. But end of the day, the obstacles are the way. And but
Mhm.
the key is to have that space, that time where you can hear that that voice. What do we call that voice? This ain't it.
You're saying it.
This ain't it. Exactly, exactly. Listen to this
Yeah.
ain't it. The universe,
Yeah.
aka this ain't it.
Yeah.
To listen to that voice. So I hope this sort of inspires people. But I like to kind of wrap up with a question that I ask in three parts. Now, I'm not going to age you, but your age may, yeah, I think your age will fit this three-part question, right?
Okay.
Now, if you had the ability to go back and talk to yourself at different stages of your life, right? Knowing what you know now, if you go back to your 20-year-old self, what would you tell your 20-year-old self?
Hmm. Whatever is meant for you is meant for you. Nobody can take that away from you. Nobody can take that away from you.
Word, word.
Yeah.
I don't know why I said word, but it sounds pretty cool. Like
Because you're talking to me.
I'm trying to fit you into this. That's my bebop. That's me trying to fit you with my accent and all that stuff, right? So that's the word. If you could talk to your 30-year-olds, because here's the thing. I'm training to be a psychologist, so we look at development as increments. Every year we age, we change psychologically.
Yeah.
So 10 years later, what would you tell your 30-year-old self?
I mean, the theme stays the same. You have all this. I think 30 is one of those years where you have all this existential angst about where you're going and where you think you should be at that point in time, and I probably tell myself it's no big deal.
You've
It's
been
no
down this
big.
path before.
Yeah, relax. It's no big deal. Get excited.
Yeah.
You have so much more life to live.
All right. Word again. Word.
Yeah.
If now the last part of that question is, what are you telling yourself? Now you have this information. What do you tell yourself now?
What's for you is for you.
Mm-hmm.
And relax, get excited. I think what's most important to me is that I stay present. That I'm not spending my time over analyzing the past, and I'm not spending my time over analyzing the future. Stay present, because that you know everything you need to know in order to do what it is you want to do. And you literally can do anything you want to do. You can manifest that.
Word.
Yeah.
Word. Listen, Ashley, this has been a treat. I'm going to have to call you later on and say, why the hell didn't you tell me all that other stuff? But outside of that, I think I love this discussion. I hope it vibes with people. Thank you so very much for being on. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you. And this is, ladies and gentlemen, this concludes at the end here of episode 2. I thoroughly enjoyed this. Look for episode 3 coming. And as always, family, and to you, Miss Ashley, stay well.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Cheers.